Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Hanson, owner and founder of Original Development and Therapy Center located in Dunwoody, Georgia. This is part of an ongoing video series. Some of the videos are addressing the problems that families are facing today with children suffering from neurobehavioral challenges. Other videos talk directly to the pregnancy, while others talk to couples getting ready to start their family. Today we're going to talk about putting some concepts together. I've had several interesting cases over the last couple of weeks that really have me thinking about there's still this belief that we are part and partial. Everything that we do should be more compartmentalized rather than looking at the entire system. So for example, I had the pleasure of evaluating two children, and what was interesting to me was the history. Not so much about what happened to them along their journey. Some of our videos have really talked about those kinds of topics. But what was more interesting was all the therapies that these children had already been through, and why is the disconnect still present. One of the greatest therapies, I have it here, I love it. It's called the interactive metronome. It is a fabulous tool. These children had actually had hours of interactive metronome. The timing that they exhibited was perfect, but why do they still have problems? Why do they still have a disconnect, focus, inability to articulate, drive, power, etc.? They had also had speech, occupational therapy, and even the mom had started to dabble in some nutritional approaches, eliminating the gluten and casein because those are the popular ones that are known to cause some kind of sensitivity to the gut. My point in bringing this up today is that if you don't look at the entire picture, what happened? Where did this child leave off? And was it only a timing problem? So when you do interactive metronome, and we will actually have a video that highlights interactive metronome because it is an excellent tool, so don't misunderstand me. But when you do interactive metronome, what you're trying to accomplish is the proper timing between both sides of the brain. We've actually talked about this in earlier videos as well. So you have two sides of your brain. They both do an enormous amount of work, and they're similar but different functions. So for example, the need to talk is on the right-hand side of the brain, while the work of talk is on the left-hand side of the brain. In order for me just to have this conversation with you right now and deliver the material in a sequential form so that you can understand it one step at a time, there must be the appropriate timing between the two hemispheres. So this is an excellent tool, and these children absolutely had excellent timing. So the work that they did enhanced the timing between both sides of their brain, but it wasn't enough. This is the part that I really want to address today. It is why, number one, I named this practice Original Development. We find health at its origin. We want to know what the root cause is. What is causing the lack of integration? The other component to this is that you can't address one area at a time. Now, if you're a parent right now that you're going from one therapy to another, you understand this. You go over here for this particular exercise or therapy. You go over here for another one. You go over here for some advice, and nobody knows what the other one is exactly doing. That is the difference in this practice. We manage the entire package. We look at the mechanical issues like timing, or perhaps it's speech, or perhaps it's the way the child walks or their organizational skills. We also look at the chemistry. What are the sensitivities? what are the deficiencies, what are the things that are actually blocking good connection like toxins. We also address the emotional component. Now, I am not a speech pathologist and I am not a counselor. However, all of those areas of development had sequential steps that had to come together in order for language to become part of who your child is. You also went through a developmental cycle in your gut to be able to break down fat first, then carbohydrates, then protein. And what we typically find is that there are food sensitivities, but there's also enzyme problems. There's also dysbiosis, or a disharmony between the good and the bad bacteria. There might be yeast, there might be parasites. And then the emotional component goes back to the EEG diagnostic that I shared with you weeks ago called the Neuro Infinity. Those two particular children that I was referring to when we got started this morning, both of those children did have an altered brainwave pattern. And this is absolutely a component of what is causing the disintegration. One had a very high beta, and it matched his personality, where he is much harder in his movements and the way he would stomp his foot for the foot plate on the interactive metronome. Beta, very high in a 7-year-old, is going to have a very different presentation than what it would have in its normal development around puberty into adulthood, while the sibling demonstrated a very high theta. In fact, the theta, which is about light, meditation, growth, and repair, was almost equal to beta, and she's older. So this does not match the normal power that the brain is supposed to have. And in fact, the picture that we found on the EEG matched a lot of the chief complaints that the family was still struggling with. So now being able to look at the entire picture is going to make a difference. We're not only going to address the brainwaves, but we're going to coach and guide, not just try certain diets to see if they work, because I hear this too. We tried gluten-free, casein-free, and it didn't work. There's many components to this. One, did you try it for at least 90 days? You must try something for an entire season in order for there to be enough time for cells to turn over, mimicking a healthier role model every cycle of change. And it takes about 2 or 3 of those in order to truly manifest that change. And the same thing is true about adding supplements into the body. And then the mechanical picture. Are you going back as far as you need to? In this particular direction, with these 2 children that I was referring to earlier, the earliest times of neurological development were missed. Instead, whatever the buzz of therapy was out there is exactly what these children had had. So it did give them benefit. I don't ever want to take away from that. But if you do not go to someone like myself, who is trained to look at development as far back as you possibly can look, in order to find out where did that disconnect occur, you will not be able to bring your child forward. You must look at the mechanical component, the emotional component, the chemical component, all at the same time, because that's exactly the way that you exist in this very moment in time. Thanks for tuning in.